Let's welcome to the show the Parliament-based political correspondent for Waatea, former National Party MP under the John Key government. It is Claudette Hauiti. Claudette, thank you for joining us and welcome to the show.
Nā mihi ki a koutou katoa, nā mihi ki a korua, rawe ki te korero I a koutou katoa.
It's not really the conversation for tonight, but you were an MP under John Key. And I haven't heard you talk about this with Bomo or anything either. When you look at this government and what they're doing and how they're operating, what do you think compared to how you operated under a former National Party Prime Minister?
Well, you can't compare the two parties and you can't compare the two leaders either. They're very, very different. So they've got very different styles in terms of how they manage their caucus. John Key is actually quite hands off. He had a really strict sergeant of arms in Wayne Eagleson.
Right.
Christopher Luxon, he likes to be a little bit more hands-on. He likes to be involved in the policies as well too. If you kind of notice, if he has a stand-up with his ministers, he has a tendency to take over. John Key never did that. He allowed his ministers to speak to their policies. The other thing, though, the most outstanding difference between this current National Party and the John Key Party is that the John Key Party had a moral base, and that was in the individual Bill English. And so they don't have that moral compass in this current caucus. And I can't emphasize it enough. That moral compass did come in in Bill English. And then there were a couple of really strong Māori senior members in Hekia Parata and Tauhenare, particularly Tauhenare, who was the leader of the Māori Select Committee, really strong when it came to tikanga. And so he was deferred to as well as Hekia. We don't have that with this current party.
It's interesting you would say that as well. I think Toe and I follow each other on Twitter, and maybe like what you're saying, you can see he doesn't see his national party in this national party as well. It's fairly clear he's in a similar position. And it intrigues me as well. I dig on religion a little bit, Claudette, so forgive me for this, but I'm pretty sure that Bill English would often say his Catholic faith was one of the things that he found his moral compass in. And then you've got a Prime Minister now who adheres to some kind of evangelical Christian faith, and it's sort of the opposite. It's kind of weird how it can go either way depending on who they are, I guess.
I guess.
Yeah.
Sorry, can't comment on that. Don't know enough about that. But what I can say about Bill English, and I don't know him that well, but he was more grassy rootsy, and his wider whānau were more grassy rootsy, community based as well. And of course, Dr. Mary, Bill's wife, who came from working class stock from Wellington, her mother Italian, father Samoan. So, we've got those kinds of backgrounds that do have an impact on Bill English's whakaaro. And he also had, I've got to say, a really strong private secretary in Amo Haere Haukamo, who actually opened the doors of John Key and Bill English to allow the iwi Leaders Forum to have an open door policy to the national government of the time. Wow. And again, we don't have any of that, none of that with this current government.
I guess the iwi leader conversation is very apropos for tonight, and you'd say with this current government, it would feel like from the outside looking in, it's fairly opposite. I did a bit of a toss-up today. I probably haven't got everything, but this is what I wrote down. Māori Health Authority, Māori Wards legislation, Treaty Principle Bill, Regulatory Standards Bill, prioritising English in government departments, Marine and Coastal Area Bill, road signs, removing Te Tiriti obligations from schools, future bonuses for public servants who speak fluent Te Ao Māori stopped or being stopped, ending co-governance, halting He Puapua, repeal of Section 7A of Oranga Tamariki, stopping smoke-free 2025 with disproportionately impacted Māori, cutting funding for Matariki, cutting funding for Māori housing programs. And I've probably missed on some, but any one singular one in and of itself, you might go, well, that's just a policy, but putting them all together, and talking about the iwi forum going in to see John Key, I just can't imagine how this government can say anything other than they are an anti-Māori government.
And so Māori feel that they've been bashed and battered by this current coalition government, and your list of stuff just goes to highlight just how much of a battery Māori have had in the last couple of years. The clawback of a whole lot of initiatives that were actually started under a national government.
Yeah.
The Māori Health Authority, whānau ora, they all started under that. The repeal of seabed foreshore, they started under that John Key, Bill English government, and this government has repealed it. Now, there's a couple of things here, I guess, and one of them you can say that from Nicola Willis's comments on Mata with Mihi Ngārangi Forbes, she said that they wouldn't have had so much of a profile or, highlighted so many issues around Te Ao Māori, but because of their coalition partners. Yeah. So a couple of things here. One, then we've got to look at the leadership of the National Party, just how strong he is or is not in ensuring that those gains under a previous national government were maintained, and they've been stripped away, clawed away from, and you can see that from the moment that they signed their coalition partnership agreement. I mean, all that stripping away of treaty principles, the names, from the bills that was a result of the New Zealand First National Coalition, because Shane Jones and Winston Peters, they've got a really big issue with the Waitangi Tribunal, and anything to do with the Treaty of Waitangi and its principles, they have a big issue with that. The rest of the other issues in terms of the Māori Health Authority, Winston Peters was firmly against that. He Puapua, he was firmly against that as well too. However, those gains were made, and it just goes to show how not strong the current national leader is in ensuring that they were maintained under his watch. So it actually does highlight the leadership and the lack of this current national leader.
And even though that list sounds, when I say impressive, I mean in length, not in content, I'm sure I'm missing many things that are maybe more minor and haven't quite grabbed the headlines that would be there as well. But Claudette, look, that's not the real reason we've got you here, but it was very generous with your time, so thank you for jumping in on that. We'd like to have a look at what's going on with Te Pāti Māori at the moment and what's happening, what we're seeing from the outside looking in. And I thought the best way we could do this is to maybe hear from Te Pāti Māori themselves. And Rawiri and Debbie were on... We're seeing from... hang on a sec, I've got something on. There it is. Apologies. And where the best way to start is to maybe hear from them themselves. Te Pāti Māori leaders spoke out for the first time, and I think we were just looking before we came on, Claudette. I think Eru Kapakingi sort of launched the grenade into this conversation somewhere in the first half of October, which means we've been talking about this, or it's been in the atmosphere for between 3 and 4 weeks perhaps, and this is the first time that these guys have officially spoken out. So let's just hear, I'm going to play like 3 short clips, not going to play the whole story, but this is Debbie and Rawiri first talking about what's going on in Te Pāti Māori and what the public are seeing.
It is now time for people to have the whole picture.
After weeks of infighting within the party, initiated last month when the son of Māori Meno Kapakingi publicly accused the leadership of behaving like a dictatorship.
There's no dictatorship, there's no bully, there's no toxicity here. Well, we still haven't been able to establish what the issues are.
What is clear is that the party's deeply divided, with new allegations emerging that the now suspended Māori Meno and Te Tai Tonga's Tākuta Ferris were seeking support to roll the leaders, a claim Māori Meno has refuted.
If the question is, was there a coup to roll the leadership? I would say absolutely yes. I'm not going to dilly-dally around the facts.
If there was a coup or a challenge, it has failed. We are here.
Ferris has since publicly backed calls by his electorate committee for a vote of no confidence in the party's president, John Tamihere, and the national executive, which includes the co-leaders.
I didn't like JT either when I started. I'm just going to say that straight up. I say that to his face. But what I do like is the mastermind and the brilliance that he has to be able to strategically position and drive this party.
When I say rogue MPs, that's absolutely what they are. And they have operated against and breached the Constitution.
So Rawiri mentioned rogue MPs there. John Tamahiri talked to that, and he thinks that they should resign. This is just 10 seconds on that.
From the party.
You should do the honourable thing, understand that, and go and do a honi harawira.
Which is, he left the party, set up his own party.
Yeah.
And finally, we'll play one more clip from the story, which is back to Debbie and Rawiri talking about wanting peace, but also this focuses a bit on the iwi leaders and what the iwi leaders want. And it's really interesting that the word ideally gets used in this little clip. The iwi leader says, ideally, it'll be one party, but I guess from the outside looking in, that means acknowledgement that maybe there will be a more official split, like it could happen. I just thought the word ideally will stick together as one party. It's an interesting perspective to be putting out to the public today. So let's have a listen to this last 40 seconds.
Absolutely, we want to have peace, but the reality is there has to be a time limit.
Iwi leaders are growing impatient too, arriving at Parliament to meet with the party and try to keep them from booting anyone out.
Ideally, we would have a single party, Māori party, but if it goes down that way, we'll be trying to keep them together.
And they're clear on what must happen in order to get there.
A ceasefire, a truce, throwing barbs across social media, that needs to stop. The second one is to pull together a hui here in Pōneke, ona marae, under tikanga Māori.
Extending their support to bring the party's crisis to an end.
So there you go. They're the clips we're going to play for tonight off that story. Claudette, I mean, if you're okay with it, I wouldn't mind just passing you the ball and you helping us understand what we're seeing and anything that you know that you're able to talk about, but also to do specifically with, you know, we're not Māori, I'm not Māori, Chewie's not Māori, what non-Māori might be missing in this whole conversation, if anything.
Well, thank you very much for allowing me to be the māngai of all Te Ao Māori. That's big pressure. Thanks very much for that, voice.
No dramas, no dramas.
No pressure. Can I just say this, though? I've written an article on waateanews.com and on my Facebook page, and it's about other parties that have also experienced leadership issues. So this is not new, right? Every single party has and will continue to have issues around leadership. It's just the way of life if you are a political party and a member of a political party. So to think that this is suddenly a new phenomenon, get a life, it's not new. I guess the issue, though, is that we just had a magnificent hui last year before Kingi Tuheitia passed away, where he talked about kotahitanga. Yeah. And that was picked up by Toi Te Tiriti around kotahitanga and Te Pāti Māori, where we talk about one moving forward. And this flies in the face of kotahitanga, this split. But again, it's not new. It just goes to show that Māori are like anyone else. They have teething problems around their parents and, you know, their whānau. They got whānau issues, and it's playing out in public, like all other parties do, okay? So there's that. Now, so when you've got rogue MPs, what Rawiri is saying that they've got rogue MPs there. I guess the rogue MPs, for want of a better word, Whaia Maria Mino and our brother Tākuta, they've got issues, ideological issues. They've got values that they don't see are quite in line with the other members of the caucus and perhaps the wider Te Pāti Māori. And so they obviously feel that they have not been given an opportunity to voice those, although there are processes within all parties and Te Pāti Māori where they can be aired. And given that they are caucus members, they would have an opportunity to air that. So, you know, they've obviously decided that they didn't get that opportunity, and so they have distanced themselves. I'm talking about Maria Mino and Tākuta. One of the things that we have to remember, though, is that Debbie Ngāti Wapaka and Rawiri Waititi, they were the ones, particularly Rawiri Waititi, won his seat in 2017 that got Debbie Ngāti Wapaka in as a list MP. And so everything hinged on that one seat. So by rights, as the tuakana, he needs to be that leader, that co-leader, and she needs to be the co-leader as well because she came in off the list. So regardless of whether you see this as in terms of Te Ao Māori or not, but well, in Te Ao Māori, they are the tuakana of that party because they came in first. And if you want to have your tuakana step down and you want your taina to take over, your younger members of the caucus to take over, then they're going to have to go through that whānau process. And that doesn't seem to have happened here. But, you know, to overthrow your tuakana without that without that tikanga process, which is a political process, I think that's a bit questionable there. The other thing too I want to raise, and that's about Toitū Te Tiriti. Erukapa Kingi had rightly said that he would distance himself and Toitū Te Tiriti to become the activist group that it is. And that is what they are. Now, interestingly, that the Prime Minister, he said in his stand-up, post-cab stand-up yesterday, that Te Pāti Māori currently is nothing but an activist party. Yeah, that is exactly what they are. That is why they are there. That is why they are so popular, because they are activists. They're not just some opposition party that goes in and opposes. They activate the people on the outside. That is exactly what they are doing. So in Iokune Whakaaro, having Toitū or the activist group that supports Te Pāti Māori or the Māori caucus of Labour or the Green Party, have them as an activist party outside of those entrenched parties, fabulous. That is where they should be. And then coming back to the dissension amongst the caucus members, that is something that they will have to take care of themselves within their party structure, constitutional-wise. They've got a constitution, and it's based on tikanga, and nobody can say that it isn't, because it is, and they're the only ones that can change that tikanga, that kawa for themselves. Now, having the iwi leaders forum step in, oh my God, that's like having, you know, the big guns come in and, you know, try and mediate amongst this already really high profile, very onto it rōpū. So you've got these two big groups coming together. And if I was Labour, I'd be really scared about that, because you've got an iwi leaders group of over 100 Māori leaders wanting peace amongst Te Pāti Māori. You'd never see them come in and step in on a Māori caucus for Labour. You'd never see them dare to even want to negotiate some kind of a deal with the Māori members of the Green Party. So if I was all these other parties, I'd be really scared, really frightened that these iwi leaders are actually backing Te Pāti Māori to get their shit together, ready for 2026.
Do you think the iwi forum coming in is to back Te Pāti Māori, and I guess what I'm thinking is to back Deb and Rawiri, or is it more neutral to back the kaupapa of the whole party, therefore they've got to sort the whole thing out, not particularly siding with any one group?
Absolutely correct. The kaupapa is bigger than anybody else. And so they're there to champion the kaupapa. They're there because the kaupapa is a one-term government. Even though Christopher Luxon, even though he stood up yesterday and said that he talks to iwi leaders, you know, but he's not going to name them, you know, he's not going to name them. And, you know, he does have a bit of a soft spot for Ngaitahu, and he went down to the Waitangi commemorations this year to Kaitahu, and he got dealt to by by Ngāi Tahu in their coho. So, we're not 100% sure which Māori leaders he's actually talking to. And he would be, but, they're not going to say, he's speaking to me, because we go around and we say, is he speaking to you? Oh, nobody really wants to stand up and say, oh, yeah, we had a hui, sit down, cup of tea with him. No, but again, yes, it's about the kaupapa. The kaupapa is bigger than everybody. And here's the rub, you see. So Debbie Ngāti Wapaka and Rawiri Waititi say that they have a kaupapa that they wish to promote. And so does Maria Mino and Tākuta. They are focused on a kaupapa. And so I guess the issue is here is whether or not the values and the strategy or the ideology behind that kaupapa, they can merge those and bring those back together. It's not the kaupapa, it is how to drive that kaupapa.
When you said Christopher Luxon talks to iwi leaders, I think maybe he was misquoted. Maybe they were supposed to say he talks down to iwi leaders. Maybe they left the word down out in there a little bit. Maybe I was just thinking. Hey, Chewie, you've been very quiet. You should jump in, sir.
Yeah, I guess my question is a little bit of a fast forward and a more general question. If you take a swing at the leadership and rock the boat as much as this, do you see a pathway for these, for lack of a better term, I'll use the media's term, rogue MPs, to stick around after it? Do you think this is survivable for someone like Ferris?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So JT can say, step down, move away. But, in Te Ao Māori, there's always a way back. And so if there is a sit down at a marae and all the parties come together, absolutely, there is a way forward for all of them. It's not done until it's done. And even then, it's not really done. There's always a way back. I mean, we take Hone Harawira as an example. Although he set up mana, the relationship between him and Tariana and Peter became quite fraught. There was enough between them to still promote a kaupapa together, even though they were very separate. Now I'm not saying that, this is what's going to happen, but if those two want to return to the fold, then there is a pathway back. And if the caucus wish for them to return, they will create a pathway back for them.
I was thinking about this today and explained, I was interested in hearing talking about challenging the tuakana. It almost sounds like what you're saying is the way that it's being done, if they are challenging the tuakana, that it's kind of being done in a non-Māori way. I don't know. I'm hoping that's not an offensive thing to say, because the way you're explaining it is they're not doing it the right way as compared to tradition. Is that fair to say?
No.
Okay, good.
No.
Good. Correct me.
I mean, like in any whānau situation, you're always going to have a bit of go at your siblings and your whānau members. And so when I say they're the tuakana, they arrive first. It's not an age thing. It is senior, they're senior because they arrived into Parliament first.
Yeah. I was having this conversation. I wonder how much of what we're seeing on the outside looking in could be this. So I was in a relationship once with a very quiet, very demure sort of lady, and I come from an Irish Catholic family, and sometimes she thought we were arguing and I thought we were just having a healthy conversation. So we were sort of both right, because she saw it as an argument and I just saw it as robust, fun conversation. Is there any chance that both of these sides are what they're seeing from their perspective accurately, and actually they just need to get around the table and sort out, oh no, that's not what I meant. Oh no, that's not what I meant. Oh no, that's not, you know what I mean? Could that be where we're looking for these guys?
There could be, I mean, absolutely. There is every chance that they can negotiate their way through this and come to some kind of compromise. I mean, it's not unachievable that they can do this. It's whether or not they have the willingness to do this.
Yeah.
But the best way forward for them is to do it on a marae, like Baden Barber, who is from Kahunganu, like he said, and for it to be mediated by our rangatira, and to have that hoho te rongo, it's called hoho te rongo, and so to have that, and it's up to them to want to do that.
Do you think if it went down this path that there are the numbers to roll JT, Debbie and Rawiri at the moment?
No. The numbers are squarely on the side of JT and the leadership. That's because it's the party numbers and how it's structured. So those numbers are squarely in that camp. But interestingly, in that one news, Yvonne Tahana had actually been up north, and she went to Taitokoro to talk about, to find people that were in support of Mariamino, and she did find people that were in support of Mariamino. The issue, I guess, when we're talking about numbers, is if those people who are supportive are actually members of the party. I mean, it's like anything, you've got the numbers if they're signed up to be a member of your rōpū. So it's whether or not they've got those that membership number. But currently, the numbers squarely sit with the current leadership.
All right. Would love to ask you about the treaty obligations and school boards in a second. But before I ask you that question, Chewie, got anything else you want to wrap up on this current conversation? Any other questions or comments?
I just want to thank you for coming on the show and really sort of giving us an insight that we didn't have. I think you've just blazed a trail through all of the questions that I had about what's going on and the best way to resolve it. So thanks for coming on.
I just want to pick up a point that Willie Jackson had talked about today. He had said that one of the things about party president shouldn't be so visible. Well, when you've got a Māori, like, who knows the party president for Labour? Who knows who the party president is from, National, or the party president for the Green Party, right? But everyone knows the party president for Te Pāti Māori. Well, that's what you get when you're with a rōpū Māori, right? You get the whole leadership, kit and caboodle. So for those that feel that JT has too much oxygen, that is because that's how they roll. There is a leadership, and they've got, the mahanga, the upoko, and that's who they are. So for those that don't understand how Māori leadership works, that's how it goes. You have the party president who is up front and out the front, along with the party the caucus leaders. Absolutely.
There is, of course, one exception to that rule, and that's a particular former president of the ACT Party. We all know his name quite well, who's been in the news quite a lot recently, Mr. Yago. Just make sure that's part of the ACT Party. Hey, look, thank you so much for coming.
Before I step away from Willie Jackson, he was very clear during the caucus run today that he is hoping for a by-election, and he will, if there is a by-election in Te Taitokoro, that they will stand Willow Jean Prime as the candidate for Te Taitokoro.
What's Willie up to? I mean, like, he's good mates with JT. They go a long way back. It's a strange thing. I was going to say, it's a bit weird hearing it.
That was asked of him as well, too. How far back? But politics is politics. So, that might be his mate. But that's also a party that took their seats. So, there's no love lost there. He wants his seats back, and mate or no mate, he's going to get those seats back. And he says that if there is a by-election, that's who they're going to stand, Willow Jean Prime. The Green Party will have Huhana Linden, and wow, that is one dynamic wahine. So it'll be a real fight.
And also, just to wrap this part of the conversation up, not that we'll go for much longer, but just this part is like, from, again, sitting where we're sitting looking at it, feels like Toitu Te Tiriti is really important, feels like Te Pāti Māori is really important, and in the long run I hope neither of them damage the other one, or even when, let's say, best case scenario, MPs work through their issues and all move forward together, that Toitu can then, through ERA in particular, then kind of also move forward, because, you know, you do get the sense, and you understand why, that someone's been a bit mean to my mum, and you can understand why those feelings can be there, but in their own world, in their own areas, that they all continue to move forward in their own boats, fighting the good fight.
Toitu Te Tiriti. Ai, koina. Can I also say this about Eru Kapakingi very, very quickly? Boy, he can mobilise that rangatahi lot. You know, just one text and out they come. So he is the modern face of that generation of Māori who are social media savvy. And when he mobilises that group, it's all over social media, and he's the bloke. He's the boy.
No. And we've seen that with the hikoi. I mean, that's exactly what we saw with that hikoi. Hey, just before you go, we won't play any more audio or video. We'll just like to get your initial thoughts, if you're okay with it, on the announcement today that the government, it seems like they're basically saying in the news that Erica slipped into a bill last minute about the removing treaty obligations for boards of trustees in schools. I said to you before we came on, it feels like it's come out of nowhere. You're saying, no, this is a part of their plan. But what do you think of the actual idea to implement this now that we're here?
And of course, the Board of Trustees have all come out and said that the government is overstepping the mark. I mean, this is something that the Associate Minister, David Seymour, had wanted, you know, and he said things like too many schools are spending too much time on a marae and doing a karakia. That's actually not what it's about. He says that the schools need to go back to the basics of learning and getting kids in the classroom. Well, for tamariki Māori and for tiriti, tangata tiriti, tamariki, the basic is Te Tiriti or Waitangi. That is that is the bedrock of all learning for tamariki Māori. I mean, this week we've had the primary school's kapahaka performance. There is nothing that is more outstanding than seeing the faces of these children and they're singing in te reo, but it's the knowledge that they have, the understanding that they have on what they're singing about and why they're singing this. And that is because their kura embeds Te Tiriti or Waitangi. And for a lot of other schools who are, we call them kura auraki, those mainstream schools, they want that for their kura. Now, Erica Stanford has said that there's a lot of learnings from kura kaupapa Māori that should be embedded in mainstream schools. Well, those kura schools, everything comes as a result of Te Tiriti or Waitangi. And that's what these boards of trustees, school boards, are those that are opposing this legislation, the stripping away of Te Tiriti. That's what they want for their kura as well. No, it's not about, you know, going to visit maraes every morning or doing your karakia every morning. You know, for some schools it is, actually. For some schools it isn't. It's about manaakitanga. It's about valuing your environment. It's about knowing which rākau you're looking at when you look out your window. You know, I mean, these are the types of things that come from understanding Te Tiriti or Waitangi. So there's a deliberate lack of understanding by some of our senior ministers, i.e. David Seymour, around why these kura want Te Tiriti in their legislation.
I mean, I tweeted this out today. The treaty Te Tiriti is basically as close to a founding document as we've got. Could you imagine in America if Republic politicians came out and said, oh, you need to remove all obligations to the Constitution from your school boards? Like that seems like it feels like it's, and I'm not saying the Constitution is exactly the same as Te Tiriti, but as a founding document, it's unheard of. It's unheard of. I just don't get it at all.
So the Hobson's Pledge had also lobbied the minister to have this taken away. They supported the coalition agreement to have Treaty Principles Bill removed from all legislation. And the this particular legislation was supported by the Hobson's Pledge, and the Minister Stanford, didn't deny that Hobson's Pledge was involved in this. So in terms of lobbying, so what we're seeing now is that far right lobby group having, very visible and tangible play on our policy. And so, that should be a concern for all New Zealanders, that we've got very far right groups or very conservative groups that are actually dictating what every New Zealander should or should not have.
And the scary thing about that is that's true, but then there is pretty credible evidence as well that far right group is also then being funded by another far right group from offshore. So it's actually an offshore far right group who is feeding that far right group, who is then impacting how we're living in New Zealand. So yeah, it's pretty terrifying.
Other thing too, the second reading of the Regulatory Standards Bill was passed this afternoon, and in that, David Seymour says that it's to dismantle all the bureaucracy. But actually, when he takes away legislation like Te Tiriti, just as an example, that is a meddling in regulatory standards. I mean, they're meddling in regulatory frameworks that assist the democratic process of everyday New Zealanders. So there's a contradiction there as well, that they are meddling in what they say that they're trying to achieve.
Hey, Claudette, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on today. Thank you so much for giving us some time. We would love to have you back anytime you want to come. Anytime you've got something to say, we'll have you back anytime. It'll be fantastic. But we really appreciate you bringing the perspective that we don't know about and kind of can't know about, or we can learn about, and we're learning a bit today from people like yourself. So thank you so much for being a part of the show tonight.
Toi tui te tiriti. Ngā mihi.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Claudette.